Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the Tea with Gen X, Y, and Z. We are three generations, three perspectives, one cup of truth. So, get ready for a refreshing take on hot button topics. We're going to be brewing up a steaming hot take on today's most pressing issues, where we're going to dish on everything from social justice to pop culture with humor, honesty, and maybe even a little healthy debate. We're going to sip the tea, spill the honest truth, and then find common ground across the generational gap. This show is informative, it's insightful, and it is guaranteed to stir the pot. So, hey everyone, I'm Dr. Melissa, and I am representing the X Factor.
And what's up, y'all? I'm Amber, holding it down for us millennials.
And I'm Zion, keeping it real for Gen Z.
All right, you guys. So, if you guys will remember, and I don't think it was the last episode, I think it was the episode before, we were talking about cancel culture, right?
Yes.
And we threw out this term about being politically correct, right? Which a lot of cancel culture is sort of built on the premise of that.
Right.
Today, we're going to just tiptoe in the waters, the cancellation waters, and take on something that I feel really strongly about. And it's really about our civic responsibilities, right? And the reason why I said tiptoe through the waters, people know there are a few things that you do not talk about if you want to bridge gaps, if you want to have consensus, if you want to have peace.
Right.
Religion, okay? The other real hot button thing would be politics. So I'm going to throw out this disclaimer right off the bat. We're not going to be pushing our political agenda. We're not going to be trying to influence on our own political perspective. That is not what this show is about. As a matter of fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I hope that what we do today is talk about the general perspective that we have across the generations about our civic responsibilities. One of those things happened to be voting, right? So, yeah, let's dish on this hot button topic. What do y'all think?
For civil responsibility, we know voting is a big one, but you have things like jury duty. That's a part of it. So it's a lot of things that we can say that is a civil responsibility, but the biggest one definitely is voting. I feel like a lot of individuals, when it comes to voting, they don't know how important it is sometimes because they're like, yeah, I have my own personal stance on it, but it's really bigger than that, and it's really bigger than us. You have, the presidential elections, then you have those the local elections that we have, like for our mayors, then you have the governors. So a lot of people, I feel like, are gonna need to get educated more about when it comes to voting, like how important it is to make sure you are able to select, the officials that are putting policies and procedures in place for us and for the people. So, yeah.
What say you, Z? What do you think?
Well, I love the point you made, Amber. Voting is definitely a big civil responsibility, the biggest one. A big part of it, I would like to say, like as you said, is just education. Just how well versed are you in voting?
Yes.
And so, just from a Generation Z perspective, I know we typically refrain from voting, myself included. So just go ahead, throw that out there. But I want to say that's because of our lack of knowledge in voting. You got to understand 18 is the voting age, and some of those people are still in high school.
Right.
And like you said, as you mentioned, politics is a very touchy subject. So you don't get to learn too much. It's one curriculum, one course. Right. Very limited curriculum on voting. And so because of that lack of knowledge, I feel like we refrain from voting typically. Right. And another thing I would mention is kind of how it's introduced to us. When you grow up, well, you start to grow into an adult, you're supposed to vote. Right. You can get kicked out. and fend for your own, but you can't travel certain places. You can't go to no bar or do certain things that you would probably typically like to do. So there's a lot of restrictions kind of put on a 18-year-old, rather while voting is something that you're expected to do, even though you have limited knowledge on it. So I just, I feel like from a Generation Z perspective, we typically, a little slow on that.
I like how you purpose.
Yeah, I was about to say that because I think you threw out so many things that even as an Xer I didn't think about.
Same.
So I'm going to unpack that a little bit so that I'm just clear on some of what you're saying, because I think we don't think like that.
Right.
The voting age is 18, but at the same time, there's so many things that we say to an 18-year-old, you're not ready for.
Exactly.
You're not mature enough to do this.
Right.
You can't make decisions about that. But this huge thing, responsibility of voting, and you're expected to not only vote, but we want you to vote responsibly. And I have some information about it. So here's what I would say, though, and I think that's why I'm so excited about this episode, because I think there's very few things we're going to talk about that you're going to see such a stark perspective difference with the generations. And it's because, number one, of the gravity of the topic that we're talking about, but it is also because of the historical perspective.
Yeah.
So when Zion was saying that, a lot of it is lack of knowledge. And we've talked before, he's talked extensively just about Zers being more skeptical, less likely to fall in lockstep with what they're supposed to do. Like, this is the expectation. They're more likely to push back and say, but why?
Exactly.
For an Xer, it hits at the core of me, because historically, voting rights have not always been a given. And I'm not even just talking about from the perspective of racial, and that's certainly there, no question about that. But as a woman, we haven't always had the right to vote. As a country, we started this country basically fighting against injustices and tyranny. So when we talk about voting, for me, it's like, sit on the sidelines. What? Like, do you know how many people died? Do you know how many people marched and bled and suffered so that you can go to that little booth and be heard? Yeah. So,
and I'm gonna piggyback off of both of you guys, because for me speaking, for myself and maybe some other millennials, growing up, voting was something I knew I had to do. It was our social responsibility, right? But I also didn't have the education to know, like, I know the difference between the Democratic and the Republican Party, but like, exactly what does that mean? So mom's always told me, well, you got to vote for the Democrats. I'm like, well, Mommy, I don't know what that
whoever.
is.
Yeah.
Like, or whomever you have to. And I'm just like, well, I would have preferred to know the history and the education behind it. So now with a lot of, and the research I was doing with the millennials, like, before voting, they like to get their education about what is being offered, or, what is this party going to provide to us before, we cast our vote. It's like a deserving type of thing. Like, is this person deserving though?
Okay. Okay. Let me tell you what I just heard. Oh, I got excited right there. So what I heard is, you just saw in real time the stark platforms and the challenges when we talk about understanding civic responsibility. And rather than berating or being mad at each other or saying, I can't believe you didn't vote, this is where understanding comes in. Exactly. So for Xers, it doesn't matter. You need to vote. We were raised by boomers who said, do you understand that a generation ago you couldn't vote? So it didn't matter. It didn't matter what you knew, what you didn't know, whether you agreed with everything or didn't agree. You better have your hips down there on election day, and you better be voting, period, right? And it was sort of like you said, it was blindly. You just voted whatever your parents said.
Exactly.
Whatever they said, there was no question. And if you wanted to have a real small plate at Thanksgiving, vote the wrong way. Vote the right. Your turkey, the piece of turkey you was gonna get, you going to get that butt part of the turkey. So you knew you had to vote a certain way, right? Now, what I heard Amber say is the millennials now said, hey, because they're reared by Xers or boomers.
Right.
We know we need to vote, but we're not going to the ballot box blindly just voting for whatever. We want to know what's the platform, what's the initiative, what you stand for.
Exactly.
And does it line up with me?
Exactly.
And then I hear Zion saying, as Zers, hey, I get it. But here's the thing. You guys have thrown these expectations out there with not a lot of information. Exactly. And if they listen to our Discord, they still are confused because we're talking at each other, not to each other. Sometimes what you're hearing is not even truthful. Like,
all right, I'm go ahead. I would love to go ahead and add on to that.
Yes,
so
please.
At first I was going to add on to yours. So I love how you mentioned just being influenced by just a parental figure in regard to who you should vote for.
Absolutely.
And to me, I feel like that encourages irresponsible voting. Yes. So now you're voting derived from conformity or emotion rather than looking up the information. Almost it discourages you from looking to other parties and other perspectives.
Right.
In that regard. So we know voting is a civic responsibility or a civil responsibility. Another civil responsibility is to express your freedom. So by expressing your freedom, learning new things, getting good information, and all of that good stuff. And then the point you had made, I don't know why I lost my train of thought, but
it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I'll just stick with that point.
The train will come back.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Typically, if you just wait right there at the station, well, I'm just talking as an Xer because I lose my train of thought a lot. Sometimes the whole train.
I remember. Okay.
See, see how I gave him that moment?
Okay.
Yes.
So a point you made that was great is kind of how the political race is just conveyed and how it's like pushed out to everybody, where you said a lot of people are just going at each other. And then when you have candidates who just constantly berate each other instead of just saying what they'll be able to do, it discourages us from voting because it looks like they're the same age as us. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh.
So that's
ouch.
That's another thing right there.
Ooh.
So you saying the debates basically is like two children going at each other.
Exactly. And
but
they do
hit
sell
some
pipe
valid
dreams.
Points though.
But they sell pipe dreams as well because there's also, especially in regard to a younger viewer who is not like you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. There's so many other processes to be made. This is not a monarchy. Like they can't just enforce any law they want to.
No, they can't.
There's different processes to it. So I feel like they do sell pipe dreams to, kind of, I don't want to say incompetent like viewers, but just like people who are not well versed into politics.
So I'll help you with the word incompetent because I know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
I've talked before about the X perspective as far as we were conditioned to just go along with authority. Right. So this is what you're told. You don't push against it. So to your point, without understanding, if you don't really understand the whole governmental process, the legislative process, somebody standing before you saying, this is what I'm going to do for you. It's sort of like, if you got the Senate and the House as well.
Exactly.
If you do not. And so here's where the intelligence of the newer generation comes in because they just don't take what you spoon feed. It's like, but how are you exactly going to do that given the makeup of the Congress?
Right.
As Xers, we just sort of said, this is the platform, this is what they say they're going to do. Right. And you went with that. Not that we didn't understand that there was a whole process. Right. It was really just about not pushing the system, but so much, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, y'all. We're going to take this break. But one of the things, because I'm telling you, I can feel their energy. They like, one of the things that when Zion was talking about our discord and our discourse with each other. Yeah. So when we come back, we're talking about civic responsibility, but is civic responsibility even civil? We're talking about civic, but we've lost some civility in this process. Yeah. So when we come back, we'll tap in on that. See you in a bit.
Catch the wave of success with Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa. Unlock your purpose, align it with your entrepreneurial spirit, and witness your business thrive. This isn't just about authenticity. It's about building a foundation so solid your business becomes synonymous with profitability. Tune in as we delve into marketing strategies that work and create an empire that stands on business. Because when purpose meets strategy, success is inevitable. Standing on Business with Dr. Melissa, where authenticity meets profitability.
Okay, thank you, and welcome back to What's the Tea with Gen X, Y, and Z. Before the break, you guys, we were, when I say diving in, swimming in, this whole conversation about civic responsibility. And I think this is one of the shows that I would say you can certainly see the stark positioning and perspectives of the different generations. Generally, we sort of have some differences, but we have a lot of consensus as well.
Right.
I think this one is really easy to see, but remember the premise of the show is to find common ground. So that's exactly what we're doing for us, but also for you. So before the break, I threw up this whole word, we're talking about civic responsibility. I talked about, are we even civil?
Right.
Okay. What say you? I mean, we talked about watching the debates, and we talked about even social media. And, you guys talk all the time about how people are so active on social media. Our political process is now by and large in the social media eye.
Right.
That's what it
was. If I could even, I know usually this is your thing, but if I could start off with this one. I love how you said, is it even civil now? And to what I would say is, no. I feel like it's now more marketing and what's receiving the most traction. An example, I would say recently, a candidate was on stream with a very popular streamer, and that got around, I want to say, at least peaked 50,000 viewers. So, and that primary demographic is younger voters. Right. So earlier we mentioned younger voters not really being well versed and knowledgeable in regards to politics. So when you have limited knowledge, it becomes more marketable. So it becomes a game of popularity. Who's more popular, who's around the media more, and then from that, if they were to vote, they're more likely inclined to vote for someone they just saw on social media. So that is taking the civility out of it.
Yeah, and you made a great point with that, because, I also agree with you that I don't think it's civil, because even when you go back to a few years ago when we got hit with COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And where it was certain monetary things that were being provided to us.
Right.
And, individuals were saying, yeah, I'm going to make sure I vote for this next person because of all this monetary stuff that I'm getting. But you're only looking at it from that stance. You're not looking at the whole big picture.
Exactly.
Because now, we're essentially paying it back. It's like some people are not looking at the big picture and getting educated to actually understand what's happening.
Right.
And where it's really a negative, thing that they're not being educated in that, in that regard. So I wholeheartedly agree.
Like kind of how it affects us as a society rather than the person, the individual.
Right.
Exactly, because they're not educated.
But I will tell you, when we talk about civility, now I'm going to tell you, I wish I had brought it. I saw a quote about the political process eons ago with, I think it was Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. Anyway, they were called, one of them called the other a dog. Like it was rough. And I was like, oh my goodness. So let me just say this. Politics has always been a firebrand. It's always been that thing that stokes emotions and we are really passionate about our stances. Yeah. So I'm not suggesting that we have throughout the years walked around and, hi, how are you? Oh, I don't agree with you. Do you agree with me? We haven't. Okay. We are Americans, which means we stand on what we stand on, and we protect our opinions like nothing else, right? Right. It's part of that whole freedom of expression and speech that we fought for. But y'all, it's gotten a little ridiculous now. It's now to the point that we just cannot disagree in an agreeable way. Right. We vilify people. Like, if you don't believe what I believe, then you are the devil, you are a communist, you are a whole bunch of other names. Like, we have, and I'm saying this across the board, we have moved from a sense of decency that I can disagree with your politics and still not be an enemy to you. We don't have to be enemies because we see a particular issue from a different lens, right? And I think we lose something. So when I said, are we even civil? And to Zion's point, it's a turnoff. Politics has almost become, it wrenches your soul. It's like, I know I need to be involved. I know I need to hear about the issues, but my goodness, the discord is so toxic most of the time. I'll be honest with you. There were whole years that I just wouldn't turn on the television, and I am a news junkie. I'm a person that, typically throughout my lifetime, wake up every morning, I get my cup of coffee because you don't want to talk to me before that coffee. I'll just let you know right now. I'm a whole nother person. Dr. Jekyll, not Dr. Melissa, Mr. Hyde. I get my coffee, I watch my news, right? But we got to the point where it was so wrenching that I stopped doing that, number one. And number two, the news became so political. It was no longer about what was really going on. You went to the channel which would push the agenda that you wanted to believe.
Right.
And you could hear the same news story, the exact same thing. You wouldn't know it was the same story depending on which channel. Right? So I do think we've lost that, and I think that is responsible for a lot of people saying, I'm checking out.
Right.
And I did want to, I'm sorry, did you want to go ahead and speak?
Go ahead, Z.
Okay.
I'm going to let you be great. Go ahead.
I did want to go ahead and introduce a term I don't know if y'all are familiar with, but compulsory voting. And what that essentially is where it's like, almost to a degree where it's mandatory to vote. I know as president, an example in Britain, I believe 20 other countries as well. And essentially what that is where you're encouraged to vote so much or suggested to vote so much that you would receive fines and other forms of minor punishments if you didn't vote, which obviously substantially increased their voter turnout. But that's not always a good thing, especially if that voter is not well-versed or well-knowledgeable, educated with the candidates or even the parties in general. Yeah. So I did want to mention that as well. And then even with our society, where we're at, there is a lot of shame for not conforming to a party or a candidate that someone else is in favor with.
That's deep. That's real deep. And, what I wanted to throw out there is, sometimes even like the presidential election, it's so popular on television, on social media. Individuals forget that they have their own states that have elections that we have to vote for. So we have to vote for our local mayors. Right, exactly. We have to vote for the governors. Exactly. Those are the individuals that can help us in our states. Not saying the presidents can't. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they can't, but they're the ones that directly affect us in their decision making.
Exactly.
So they don't shine enough. And I'm not saying that they would, because some of these, broadcasters are, worldwide broadcasting. So it would just really be, our state ones. But, people really be like, well, I'm voting for the president. I'm not voting for nobody else. And I'm like, well, we need to vote for the president, the governor.
That's a great point. That's a great
point. For everybody, right? So,
yeah.
Sometimes, with the lack of education, with not knowing about parties and certain things, also not understanding the legislative system, even in your state.
Exactly, and the impact of it as well.
Exactly.
Especially you can't complain about bumpy roads and then you're not
like me. I always complained about the bumpy roads.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Oh my goodness, you could not have given me a better segue.
Okay.
That is the segue that I needed.
Yes.
When Zion said you cannot complain about the bumpy roads.
Right.
I remember a very popular president a few years ago said, "Don't boo, vote." People are booing. Boo! Don't boo, vote. Here's the thing that I will say to sort of put a bow on this issue that we have. To Amber's point, exactly. When you're talking about the local elections, we sit out on that. But then when they take away one of the trash pickup days, like we're upset, right? Because those policies directly affect us. To Zion's point about complaining about bumpy roads, I get it. The political landscape has gotten to be a little gut wrenching at times. Our discord has changed. Our the way that we have our conversations has changed. I get that. And I'll be the first to say it feels different. And I'll be the first to say that it certainly could lead you to feel like I need to just check out.
Right.
But I'm going to say this. This whole country is built on the democratic process, democracy. So what that means is majority. So what that means is when you don't show up, when you sit out, and I don't care which way you want to go, when you sit out of the process, your silence is deafening. Like people say, I'm not going to vote. Your vote, not voting, is a vote.
Exactly.
But believe it or not, your failure to cast that ballot is a decision. I'm always amazed in the 30 years when I would be having therapy sessions with somebody and they'll say, I'm not going to make a decision. And I would say, not making a decision is a decision. Like you just made a decision not to make a decision.
Right.
So here's the thing. While it may be uncomfortable, when I talk about civic responsibilities, you guys, listen, I know it can be discouraging, but honestly, when we wake up every day, we wake up in a country that is being governed by laws and policies. And those things are going to happen whether you decide to sit at home and complain or get out and just make your voice heard. And I will say this to Zion's point, and it's so true. I don't even know if you know how true this is when you talked about the shaming. That is very prevalent in the minority community as well. I think because of the historical perspective of not being able to vote.
Yeah.
Right.
I will be honest with you. I belong to very historically strong organizations that voting is one of our primary initiatives. I'm telling you, that's a big issue for us, as it should be. But I can also say as well, standing back and taking a wide lens, I can see where it can feel almost, I don't want to use the word like bullying, but it is kind of like, you look at that person that didn't vote, you be like, did you? You sort of, it's a little
judgment.
It's a poo-poo look. It's kind of like you didn't vote. And I'm telling you,
Get a side eye.
it's a side eye. It's a little side eye. And I'm going to say it's a side eye for a reason, because some generations have the misfortune of knowing what it looks and feels like if you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
They know if it goes wrong. And if you're living in a country where it's the loudest minority that's screaming and yelling that gets to make all of the policies and laws that does not represent the majority, that can be scary. So I hear you. But do you really have the luxury of sitting out?
Yeah.
Do you have or is it important that if you don't have the information, you get it? And even if somebody, to your point, if they don't have everything that you agree with, like, do they deserve my vote? Well, listen, at the end of the day, nobody's going to 100% have your agenda but you.
Right.
And even if you had that agenda, to Zion's point, you can't push it because you're not the monarch of this country.
Exactly.
So this country, laws will be made as a compromise from various viewpoints, and nobody gets everything they want.
Right.
If you want that, you got to go start your own country. Okay, go get your own country by yourself, and every law, this is where it's going to be, and Monday we're going to do this, and you can do that. But when you live anywhere with other people, this is not just about you.
Right.
So
it's democracy.
You gotta be able to coexist.
Exactly. So what's our responsibility? Do we, to Zion's point, go out and get that extra information? If you're a Zier, get that information.
Yep.
Get that information, and then make a choice based on what feels good to you, to your soul, right?
Right. Exactly.
I'm saying that, but my children, I was always like,
right.
You know who you voting for?
Right.
If you in this house, this is who you got to vote for.
And if you didn't, don't tell me. No.
Get information. See if it aligns with your principles, and then make a well-informed decision. So
that's all you can. That's the only thing we can, provide.
Right.
Make a decision that you feel good with, that you can sleep with.
Exactly.
When you go to sleep at night, you say, "I made the best decision that was, for me."
Absolutely.
In that time period. So yeah.
And to finalize that, here's the thing: we live in a wonderful, great country, the greatest on the planet. that is ruled by laws and a democratic process. Here's what I'm saying to you. When I said the word responsibility, I didn't say civic feeling. I didn't say civic want to. I said civic responsibility for a reason. There's a responsibility to live in the greatest democracy there is.
Right.
It comes with responsibility. When you drive and when you get on TV and when you can just say whatever old trifling ratchet thing you want to say on social media and nobody bangs on your door and arrests you for it. Like
Right.
when you enjoy these freedoms come with the responsibility, which means the perspective of what's the T with Gen X, Y, and Z is it avail yourself of the knowledge. And then at least if you're going to say, I'm going to sit out, please let it be that you have at least examined everything, the pros and cons, and say, I've made a decision, and not just got caught up in the emotion of, you know what, I'm frustrated, so I'm just going to sit out. That's what you call being reactive and not proactive. That's what you call reacting and not responding. We just want you to respond.
Right.
Respond to this task at hand. If you're not going to vote, at least say, hey, I went through the pros and cons. I got the information. I looked at the different agendas. And I determined that for me,
Right.
I don't want to be a part of this process.
Right.
But make sure you understand that what you're doing is sitting out of the process.
Right. That decision affects our society.
Absolutely.
Amen. Amen. All right, you guys. So listen, this has been a good one. I love it. So listen, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. Listen, you guys, let's keep this conversation brewing, not just through November. Let's keep this conversation brewing.
Yep.
Remember, we got to ask questions. We got to listen to understand. And we have to acknowledge the unique challenges that each generation faces. And you guys, we got to look for the common ground because trust me, it's there. So until next time, let's keep sipping and let's keep talking. Tune in next week for another thought-provoking and entertaining conversation that bridges the generational gap, one cup at a time. See you next week.